Yeah, welcome to this video, round 6 of the Sinquefield Cup. Yeah, the round after the rest day. It was an interesting round, and we're going to look at all of the games as we already did in the videos before, the two videos before. However, unfortunately, in the on paper main game of that round, Aronian with white against Magnus Carlsen, we didn't have such an interesting game. This is why I'm starting with that. Okay, spoiling a little bit here, but you'll see that it wasn't really that interesting. We had an English opening here, c4, e5. Aronian is switching around between c4, d4, sometimes knight f3. And here c4, e5 is something that was certainly part of the preparation. Carlsen has played this reversed dragon setup. I mean, black is who chooses the setup. This is white is playing the dragon reversed, but black is choosing to play d5. That makes it a dragon. So he had played this before, so it could have been part of the preparation. This, for example, Carlsen only had played last year in a rapid event in Brazil. The whole line here is very solid for black. The dragon has the reputation of being a super aggressive opening, and you would think that with a tempo up it would be very, very exciting for white. But the thing is that with that tempo up, white is actually discouraging black from those sharp setups that we often see with colors reversed, where long castles is happening and we have opposite side castles. This is not happening here. Both sides have castled short, and now we get more of a positional battle. Something that white can also play against the dragon. That is called the classical variation, and it's not supposed to be troubling black so much. In fact, the extra tempo here for white makes it very often comfortable for white to play, not without not with much risk or anything, but it is not a line that promises white so much. As I can tell from own experience, I've tried to play this with white quite a bit over the years, and I never really found a way forward to do something concrete. Yeah, knight d2. This line is a bit rare, yeah, but has been played. It's not a new idea. White quite often wants to focus his knights to maybe jump onto c5. Carlsen here, however, has an opportunity that he did take, trading off that bishop. I think that's almost invariably a good idea against this fianchetto setups. That is a strong bishop on g2. Let's get rid of it. Yeah, Aronian captured that now and went queen b3. Yeah, it doesn't lead to much, but white really doesn't have something great that he can do. If knight b3, for example, trying to go to c5, black can just centralize. And I mean, he doesn't have a bad piece here in this position. On a b5 move, you always have this knight d4 jump, and this is happening in the game, something comparable. Quite often there would be a structure where white takes on d4, and after e takes, black has ideas against e2. We see that in the game. I think already this is kind of equal. It's not really leading to anything great that white has here. Queen b3 was played, and Carlsen just retreated, keeping everything nicely centralized. The queen on h3 was pretty much on its own, and well, you cannot do something like that.
Check.
That wouldn't be a good idea. Stumbling into that tactic. Yeah, so black went back, knight f3, a5. That's also typical maneuver there, attacking those pawns. White has to go forward, and now knight d4. I already mentioned that idea. In this structure, black always has these ideas against e2, and this is very often the counterplay that he needs, because this is also potentially weak, and sometimes d4. And in our game, actually, after a4, we had queen d5, And this is forcing what happens now. It's really, if white is now not taking, he did take on d5. If he is not doing that, let's say he keeps the queen on the board, then black plays something simple like this, and he has ideas like c6, c5 at the right moment, and still f5. Black has a space advantage here. We shouldn't forget that in the center. So white is taking now, which is basically ending the game. But he didn't really have a great alternative. Takes, bishop takes. Why is it ending the game? Yeah, white is a pawn up, and black has to get it back, which means he has to play f5. Now the knight moves, takes, and rook e2. That was a bit quick due to some server delay. Yeah, and now this is traded, and we now get basically everything traded. Rook e1,
check,
and bishop b4. Again, if you don't do the simplification here, that is applying to both sides, then you are really, really worse. So sometimes they get into these situations where you really cannot avoid anymore that everything gets traded down. And again, here we have those simplifications. Takes, everything gets taken.
Check.
And here they already called it a day, as there's absolutely nothing to play for. Yeah, that was, as I said, a rather unexciting game. It sometimes really happens that players on that level, that standing, okay, you'd like to win, that's certainly true, but they don't want to risk something great. And Aronian played a safe opening with relatively safe opening with 1c4, and we got to the situation where it was difficult to avoid those simplifications. It's a bit of a shame to watch, but yeah, shame is the wrong word, but you would like to see something more spectacular, but it just happens sometimes that nothing is going on. Okay, the next game I'm going to check is Giri Anand. We have a Slav defense here with e3, the slow Slav as it is normally called. And now Anand comes up with a slight surprise, plays bishop g4, which is not the main move. Bishop f5 is the overwhelming main move on the top level. Bishop g4, however, is of course totally okay. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. The interesting thing is that after h3, now Vichy retreated to h5. This is really not very common. Normally, if black plays bishop g4, he's taking and continues like that, setting up this typical central formation with the bishop traded, which is of course very, very sound. It's a very healthy setup. However, white is given the bishop pair without any particular compensation. Black's compensation is his flexibility maybe, but long term he always has to worry a little bit that white can do something with the bishops. He played bishop h5, and ultimately this will also not preserve the bishop, but it leads to something different, as white has to play, if he really wants to play for something, he has to play the move g4. And this is what Giri did. Yeah, either here or let's say after knight c3, e6, then g4. It leads to something comparable. But that's the only way forward for white, yeah, to have to break that pin. And this is what happened. This will net white the bishop pair anyway. But in this particular situation, white has played with g4, which gives this a distinct flavor. Also, black, of course, has currently something on the h file. Yeah, that's all very, very normal. And now a move that, I mean, I'm not an expert on that line, but I was surprised that knight d2 was played here. But, I mean, then the knight is really completely wrong there. You want it on c3, but knight c3, black can really take him. It's not apparent what white's compensation is here. Black is able to keep that pawn if attacked. So probably white didn't have much choice to play this. It's not that bad. It's just that my first impression was, wow, really that looks passive. But it's not a huge deal. We have g5 and here bishop e7. White is playing for e4 anyway, and therefore that doesn't really matter. The knight is sometimes bad on d2 because it clogs up the development, but here white gets in e4. Yeah, I note that Alan played an early knight f8 here. Yeah? Interesting, and g5. The idea is that he was able to do this. Yeah, the knight now has a very decent looking place now on g6. White has the two bishops, that's good, but he has to worry about those weaknesses all of the time. Bishop e3 and castles was played, and now Giri went d5 and still played very quickly. I didn't know that because, well, I watched some of the broadcast, but I was more focused on the other games. To be honest, they were a bit more they were sharper. Yeah, d5 played very quickly. The thing is that after that we have some simplifications going on, and I'm not really sure if that leads to anything. Maybe it was more interesting, let's say, for white to keep the tension a little bit longer and play a preparatory move. I'm not quite sure what it should be, like queen b3 maybe, a move like that, queen c7 and rook d8. I mean, black is really solid. It's not in a bad spot here. I just wonder if this is maybe resolving things a little bit too early, especially considering that here Giri played d6. I mean, that's not bad. It just trades off lots of things, and I think at the end there's probably not much happening. Here again, he could have played something slow. I mean, rook c1 or a3. I mean, some move to maybe bishop b4 is a bit awkward, right? Because you need to cover d5. Okay, let's say a3. Yeah, one of those slowish moves. Maybe this is more interesting. I mean, white has the bishops and he can still try for something with d6 later. He doesn't need to play it right away. It seems that d6, I mean, that's not an illogical move. It opens up the diagonal and everything, but if we check this now, yeah, it feels like black is okay here with b6, bishop to c5. You know, it seems to be completely okay. And after knight f4, white really has no big choice. He has to take that knight. It's just too strong. And this is a very obvious draw already, yeah, because there is nothing that white can do here. It's opposite colored bishops, and the only slight hope is, as it is often, is putting pressure on one of those pawns. Yeah, oops, I'm sorry. I meant f2 or f7. And yeah, if white would have time, like rook d7, bishop d5, putting pressure there. But the thing is, it all evaporates very quickly. If rook d7 here as rook d8, yeah, if you want to keep it on the 7th, black is just doing this here. Bishop d5 is not possible, and we have the d file. Can even ask if black is maybe even more comfortable here. So there's really nothing to be done here. They had this traded, and here rook to e7 is ending every kind of hope for something here. And I think they did trade here and agree to a draw. So a somewhat unspectacular game again here. Maybe the key really was that this very straightforward play with d5 and later d6, maybe that was really releasing the tension a little bit too early. If you want to fight here, it was maybe better to keep pieces on with a3 and only later trying to do something more concrete. But I understand, in opening up the position for the bishop pair, it does look very logical, but in this case it seems to only lead to simplifications and ultimately to nothing much. Okay, so let's have a look at the next game. This would be Vachila Graf MBL versus Topalov, and we get a Berlin. Slight surprise, Topalov plays that opening. It's not that he never does it, but he's not a regular practitioner of it. And I mean, he's a very aggressive player, so the Berlin doesn't really seem like a natural fit. Okay, we get the end game.
Check.
Yeah, not d3 this time. And we actually follow for a while the game Caruana Carlsen that was played in the first leg of that Grand Chess Tour. This was played in the Caruana Carlsen game. That black setup is not the most common one. Yeah, they nowadays more prefer things with h5 instead of h6 and knight e7. In general, black's setup or setups are quite a maze to look at. He can play everything basically, from bishop to d7 to e7, whatever. Yeah, black has many setups, which makes studying the whole thing rather confusing. In the Caruana Carlsen game that I mentioned, Caruana went b3 and won a nice game. Here, this move. MVL now deviates. He plays knight to d4, and after some thought, yeah, it wasn't all just a preparation. We follow a stem game quite a bit, but it seems that it wasn't all prep. Yeah, knight d4, rather logical move. White wants to use the f pawn at some point. Knight g6, f4, and bishop c5. Yeah, this is also something that is typical, happens quite often. What black wants to do is quite often is set up a light squared blockade, and therefore you often are willing to give up your bishop pair there on d4 to make sure that f5 is not happening. Bishop e3 and now h5. This is all part of the plan, trying to freeze the white kingside pawns. Now g4 is not possible anymore. Knight e4 takes, rook takes, and then h4. Yeah, that was the blockade that I was talking about. Now those squares are very nicely protected. Rook d1, and now bishop f5. All looking very, very standard. Yeah, and now MVL comes up with a really strong move, I think. And I had a bit of a hard time when I looked at the game to determine, and really I wasn't successful, I have to tell you right away, if this is really, really bad for black or just very uncomfortable, because you can question black's whole setup a little bit if this is really, really strong. I mean, it is strong in a practical game, quite clearly. I'm talking about the move e6. I should put it on the board. A move that is always going to be awkward to meet, yeah, because black's whole strategy was based around the fact or the idea. The fact is wrong. We just see it isn't a fact that white cannot play those moves like e6, f5, and he does anyway. Always uncomfortable to face. What is the point of the move? Black can take it with the bishop and the pawn. He took it with the bishop, and we're going to look at this later. F takes. It seems, I mean, the computers prefer that move actually. And I couldn't really determine what the best continuation is. The most obvious move is probably knight c5, looking at that weakness. But after b6, knight a6, and rook c8, it is not entirely clear how much of an advantage this is. This is rather complicated. Rook d7 and then e5 is coming. Yeah, knight takes, king f8, and as weird as this looks, it doesn't seem to be totally clear. Yeah, this is kind of hanging, and yeah, white can try f takes e5 in this position. No, knight e5. And if it goes back, if I'm giving it a check, let's start with that. I can just go here. Not much is happening. And after the rook coming back, black can probably even consider to take on c2. It looks rather cheeky, but it's maybe possible. This was knight c5 after f takes. White also has knight g5. That's also quite annoying. The knight has a good post there. And black still is rather uncoordinated. Yeah? Always remember he cannot castle. And it's not easy for him here to connect rooks or give both rooks a useful role. That's just an eternal problem in the Berlin endgame. The rooks have to play somehow. It's not quite clear how black is supposed to play that. Maybe knight e7 is an idea to go here, but white has c4. I think white has some pressure here as well. And he had pressure in the game, definitely. So I'm not really sure. Maybe that line here needs some improvement. e6 seems to be awkward for black. At least, as I said, in a practical game, it leads to a very tough defense with very little chances of getting something good. Yeah, bishop takes was played ultimately by Topalov. Knight c5. Yeah, and now we see that white is attacking two things. And black has a hard time to keep that b pawn. If he goes b6, white will take. Oops, come on, take. And play rook d7. And this is just not good. Yeah, it's just not good. One key line is this: knight e7, takes, knight here, and takes here. And here white is probably just winning the game. At least he's a pawn up for absolutely nothing. Yeah, and Topalov also, he cannot go back. Yeah, this is
check.
This is also pretty awful. Threatening this and this. Yeah, he went rook h5, and now white took on b7. It's funny that this actually was played here. Sorry, the b6 line that was played in Šarić Sulava. So it's not an analysis. This was actually played in a game. Yeah, I forgot about that. I had looked that game up. It was played, yeah, but they both weren't aware of that. Yeah, as you see from the time, they both played that independently and not just reproducing something. Yeah, well, rook h5 was played and white took on b7. And this is just really awkward, this position. Those pawns are eternally weak. nc5 is a great square for white. Rook d5, b3, keeping the tension a little bit and improving the structure. Rook b8, and white took now. Yeah, it looks maybe a bit strange to straighten these pawns, but the thing is that the remaining structure, the structure now on the board, is also hugely favorable for white. Again, a7, c7, they're all weak. This knight is not well positioned, and the bishop is not good. It's kind of, it piles up. There are a number of problems with black's position. He played c6, and now we see a nice maneuver. It's sometimes chess is simple. Yeah, you see a weakness, you attack it, and here we go. Rook d4, a4, a7 is an attackable weakness, and white is reaching for that. Yeah, unfortunately, black really has no other move than rook a8. I mean, this is terrible. If you have to play that, you know that's not your day. But okay, yeah, you cannot just give up the pawn. If white is allowed to take the a pawn, he will do so and then march all the way through to a8. And well, we see how awful this is. A nice move now is c4. Yeah, a very good technical move that maybe a weaker technical player would struggle. Yeah, why would you want to play c4? Is that a good idea? It is, yeah, because if black takes, this is what happened in the game, we see that c6 is easier than to pressure from c4, put pressure on. And in general, we have some pressure on d5, and if we get to take on d5, that is also weakness, that isolated pawn, that is easier to attack than the c6 pawn. The c6 pawn is not so easy to reach, while that pawn on d5 you can sometimes even reach with the king. Yeah, black took, rook takes, bishop f5, and knight b7. Yeah, threatening knight d6. So just a simple threat, but really awkward to meet. King here.
Check.
And knight to d6. Yeah, we are approaching a winning position territory. Black cannot defend this. f5 hangs, f7 hangs. He went to b1, and white takes on f7. There are a number of ways now. It's a matter of choosing one winning continuation. But MVL does a good job here. Nothing. He doesn't allow anything or something like that. F5, pushing that knight away, and now here attacks A7 and the bishop. Took.
Check.
Yeah, and this is overwhelming. It's rook B7 as a threat, and sometimes you get to F4 with your bishop. Rook D8, and you just took that. Yeah, that's a simple solution. Rook D6, bishop F4. We lose the whole rook. Yeah, a very nice display here by Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. Topalov really didn't have any chance in that game. It looked rather one-sided. E6 was a really nice idea, and an idea that it seems he found over the board. It's hard to tell how Black should improve earlier or even later after that, yeah, because it starts with an uncomfortable position and it went downhill step by step by step. I also couldn't see a clear way to improve upon Black's play. It was just very, very uncomfortable to play, and it feels like very deserved victory. This is also what Topalov said. He was very nice in the post-game interview, and not everybody even does such an interview after losing 2 games in a row, but he was very friendly and said, well, MVL played a good game and everything. Okay, so next game to check is Grishuk Caruana. Both players not having a great event, especially Caruana's tournament isn't what he certainly expected or what he wanted to do. Okay, so we got a Queen's Gambit declined, the same line that Caruana had played earlier in the event in the first round against Aronian, and Grishuk goes for C5, the move that grabs space here, and yeah, nowadays it's what they play on the top level, and it's no surprise. When I studied this line in 2011, I think it was, making that part of my Black repertoire, I was thinking that C5 is actually the only move that can give White anything. If he plays A3 or Rook C1 or something like that, Black is going C5 and he will equalize this. It's sometimes maybe an absolute nibble for White, but it's really little. So C5 is the way to go, and yeah, nowadays they all play it. Knight E4. That is a special move by Caruana. He's played that a number of times already, and yeah, it's interesting. It's the sharpest move, it seems, and a bit more interesting in comparison to, let's say, Knight H5 or C6. This is what I always played, there, C6. Knight E4 is interesting because it frees up F pawn and later on G pawn. And we see what happens. A3. That's a bit of a mysterious move by Grishuk, but it was part of his preparation, as he said. Unfortunately, in the post-game interview, he was cut a little bit short, and it would have been interesting to learn some points of the move, because it's not quite clear what it's doing, yeah, compared to Rook C1. Yeah, okay, Black took it here, and then went C6, Queen A4, and now G5, F5. Yeah, that is the aggressive point behind Black's Knight E4 move. Yeah, he removes that knight and frees up his pawns there on the king side. An interesting position that, by the way, at first is evaluated as good for Black by the engine. This is also what Grishuk said in the post-game interview, but he felt that it wasn't clear at all. And I have to agree, it's just very sharp. It seems that Black is fine, but it's very sharp. H3 was played, F4, putting that bishop out of business for the moment on H2. And now E5, yeah, breaking in the center. Very aggressive play here with Black by Caruana out of this very solid opening. But it is okay. He can really do that. There's nothing wrong with what he's doing. Bishop E2, E4, Knight D2 back. We see that Grishuk follows his prep. Yeah, he really was going for this. And interestingly enough, now Caruana decided to sacrifice on C5. And yeah, after that, Black has a good position. I mean, Not sure if he's really better, but he has a good position. And here. And quite curious if really Grishuk really aimed for that position, because I mean I would feel rather uncomfortable playing this, but okay, he's got strong nerves. So what is happening here? Black has sacrificed a piece for 2 pawns, and well, his pawns are really aggressively placed. Yeah, if we look at this here, that's really something. And there's pressure on e3, everything looks nice. One problem, however, that's not going to go away for Black is that his king is exposed. Especially that move g5 is something that in many situations you would rather like to take back. Play g5 back to g7, which fortunately is not possible in chess. What happens now? Grishuk decides to castle. After a longer think. What else was there? He had one opportunity, one option, let's say, that was interesting. He could have just given that piece back immediately. Something like that. That definitely was an option, and I think from my perspective, something that I maybe would have considered. It's equal material now, and Black's king is unsafe. On the other hand, the bishop on h2 is not doing that much, and White's structure is also not ideal, but I would have been very afraid of those pawns, so castling is a brave decision. Knight takes e4 was, I mean, it was also messy to take there, but it felt simpler, let's say. Okay, b5, maybe a questionable move. What else? Black could have taken on e3, and it's not quite clear what he didn't like about that. After this, White has to take on e4. He has to give the piece back in that way. Well, there's nothing else really. If you move that knight, Black is doing something like this.
Check.
And this looks terrible for White. He's he had to give up 4 pawns for the piece, and Black's pawns are amazing. So he has to basically, after taking, he has to play knight e4. There is no other move, and this seems to be really okay for Black. Black will take it, of course, nothing else. And now, White will probably have to capture on e3. There's no big alternative there. Bishop takes.
Check.
King h1. This is entirely unclear. Black is 2 pawns up, but his king is very, very, very insecure. If you just imagine that queen taking here, bishop coming here, bishop coming here, I mean, that can end up badly really quickly. Maybe it is better for Black to not take on e3, but to play bishop e6. Just put out this bishop to consolidate. One important point is that if White takes on e4, we have queen d5. And this is really nice for Black. It's equal material for the moment, but White has a hard time to keep the e3 pawn. If White takes, for example, we can bishop e3. Was that possible, by the way?
Check.
Why not? That looks fine. Black has a pawn up here, and after queens traded, things are rather clear. It's not really. Maybe he didn't see bishop e6. I don't know. F takes e looks normal. He went b5 and said, and the position is interesting after that. It's not that Black is losing, but in comparison, it seems better to take on e3. Queen e7. Now it was too late to take, as knight e4 was possible. So queen e7. King h1. It's hard to do without that move. And now bishop e6. I mean, Black definitely has compensation for that piece. It's not clear if it is enough, really. It's a very, very tricky position to play, and we see that Caruana was already down to half an hour. Note that they don't have increment, and 29 minutes for 21 moves is not particularly much if you consider how sharp and how unconventional this position is. Now Grishuk played an interesting move. it wasn't necessary to play that move. I guess there were other options, but I think it was probably strong. He played a4, yeah, attacking the queen side with a takes b5 being the main threat. The curious thing about that move is it allows that d4 push, which Caruana played, and now he went back to d1. So interesting concept. He basically has lured this pawn forward, and it turns out that the now even more advanced pawns with d3, this is what happened, that they are rather vulnerable. If black wouldn't have done that, d3, what would have happened? Taking here for knight e4 is not a good idea. That looks good for white. Taking here is different, but the same evaluation, that doesn't look right. So what else is there? He basically has to, I mean, this is something, but again, knight e4. Yeah, here the bishop is even freed. That looks particularly bad. So d3, and now bishop g4. Yeah, it was interesting to listen to Grishuk in the post-game press conference, or interview. Press conference is wrong. They did an interview there, and he felt that essentially he felt like that he's winning now, which is a strong statement, but maybe that's not so far off. I mean, winning is a bit much, but the thing is, the pawns are now somewhat stopped. They are fixed, and we shouldn't forget, if you play that many pawn moves, and most of Caruana's moves have been pawn moves, then quite often your king shield is suffering. You put out g5, f5, f4. Black's king is very much open, while white's king is safe on h1. And this can be the problem that can hit you if you push that many pawns in front of your king. It turns out that white really quickly now drums up an attack against the king. So yeah, maybe Grishuk is right after all. I mean, takes in knight b3. Yeah, and we see that how white's pieces are activated. If black moves that bishop now, knight d4 looks really nice. So he took on e3, took on c5, queen c5. Yeah, e2 wasn't helping. White can take here because this is hanging with check. Yeah, queen c5. And white took here. Yeah, things have clarified a little bit. And now we see that this bishop is out in the open. And this will spell trouble without the g-pawn being home on g7. Yeah, note that this position, if black somehow could play g5 to g7, he would be totally okay. Yeah, it's really important to understand. Queen takes e3, rook e1, queen f2, went back to f7, queen d2. Yeah, looking at this, yeah, this is really the problem. All the weaknesses. Queen g6. And now a neat move, rook a6, yeah. Not a nice move to face and you're in time trouble. Yeah, if black takes, then queen g5,
check.
this win. This is hanging with check. And this is going to be
Check.
even worse. So this had to be played. And yeah, now Grishuk played this move. That's rubbing it in a little bit. Yeah, you cannot take on a6. Brr. Yeah, he also could have played this one. Also was strong. Attacking here, and if black takes the rook, queen g5,
check.
king f8, queen d5 will win. It's a bit much. Yeah, white even has the time sometimes to play king h2 and then put the bishop out. The problem with this line is that rook e8, bishop h5 is winning, and this is not so easy to see beforehand. The idea is that this is a big threat. If black marches his pawns, then queen c6, for example, is strong. Yeah, the rook has no squares. Let's say it goes here,
check,
and checking here, and again, where are you going? Yeah, king here. There's queen
check.
g5. This is unnecessarily complicated, and rook a1, rook e to a1 is simply okay. Taken now, and rook a7. Yeah, this is reliably stopped. Black cannot play e3. Played h6. Caruana was really down on time. The clocks here are not entirely precise, but it is that area. Yeah, and Grishuk takes some time here. He repeated once. Note that there are no increments, so it's not that Caruana suddenly got a minute gifted. It's really not the case. And now
check.
he gave the check and went queen a1, and this is the decider. Queen a3 check is the big idea, checkmating. And here Caruana, while trying to play the move b4, he lost on time. I think it's part of the game still. He played it, yeah, so it is a move, but it was it happened together. Yeah, the move was played and he overstepped the time. Yeah, a nice win for Grishuk in a very complicated and sharp game, and certainly yeah, a further indication that this is not really Caruana's event. Yeah, it's not. He had an interesting opening with that piece sacrifice on c5, but ultimately the position proved to be very tricky with the deficits in king safety. Okay, now to the final game to cover, Wesley So against Nakamura. This is the main game and therefore the last game that I'm going to final game that I'm going to feature. It's not such a long game, but no, it is actually, in terms of moves, it is longer than I thought actually. Okay, let's get going. Most of this, it starts with a long theoretical line. We have a King's Indian, classical with bishop e3. This is the so-called Korchnoi variation of the King's Indian classical. Korchnoi has really put his what is the right expression there? Left his footprints or so on that line. He has played it so often, and with excellent results. This is essentially one of the sharpest things that White can play against the King's Indian in the classical variation. The thing is that bishop e3 and then putting it on f2, that puts the bishop on the most aggressive square for the queen side, but at the same time also gives black some time. f4 was happening with a tempo, and often if black pushes the g-pawn, he will win another tempo on that bishop on f2. So this is an accelerator, this kind of setup. White is very quick on the queen side, but black is also very quick on the king side, which makes it basically a guarantee for interesting games. Knight e3 was played by Wesley So now. I think that move in recent years has made a slight comeback. It was really believed to be not particularly great for some years, but it has been played a bit, as I said, recently. Yeah, I'm not a huge expert on that line because with White I always avoided that. I never liked black having this attack, so never allowed it. Knight g6, c5. This is one point of knight d3. You get in c5 quickly. Knight f6. Rook f7. All those are fairly normal looking moves. The rook on f7 is a King's Indian standard maneuver, protecting on c7 and allowing bishop f8, possibly rook g7. King h1. Now that is often necessary in the long run to give this bishop a square. If g4, g3 hits. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the entirely wrong button. h5, and now he took on d6. So did he. And they both played very quickly, so it was part of preparation. In this position, there was a game last year between Shirov and Bakro in Bilbao 2014. It's probably the European Club Cup, which I also played in. Yeah, knight b5 here. It was interesting. g4 takes. Queen c2, g3. And now Shirov very cold-bloodedly played knight c7. An interesting move, attacking here and leaving that bishop here en prise. It led to an interesting structure here. Black took it, traded here on c7, this, and now rook c1. And it seems that white was in decent shape here. He later won that game. Yeah, white will pick up that pawn at some point, and he's really dominating on the c-file. Knight b5 was an interesting alternative. It wasn't played by Wesley, so he took on d6 and now went knight b5. Yeah, a6. And now back to a3. That all was part of the preparation. The thing is that after b5 now, which is stopping that knight, this is the main idea, played rook c6. And to be honest, it's a bit mysterious what drew the white player to that setup. It was clearly part of the preparation. Yeah, he spent like 2.5 minutes to reach that, because it just is not that promising. And if you go for it, I mean, the next moves by Nakamura are very, very normal. There's nothing particularly surprising about them. And after that, white really quickly gets into trouble. So it's a bit mysterious. If you play this in 2.5 minutes, I think you should have something more up your sleeve. You cannot just stop here. I know it sounds a bit strange because we already have 20 moves on the board, but if you play 1d4 against Nakamura, you know the King's Indian is one of the main things. Okay, he can play the Dutch or whatever, but the King's Indian is one of his main openings. And if you play the classical, I mean, this exactly will be on the board. So it's a bit mysterious what So is doing now after that. I mean, what you really cannot do, and maybe this is what he did, he was entirely relying on some engine analysis, because the computers are notoriously useless in King's Indian positions, because they tend to over-evaluate white's position quite a bit. Nakamura in the post-game interview said he suspected that the computers give white a really substantial advantage here already, which is funny enough not the case. Yeah, the computers give white a slight edge only, which also surprises me. Quite often they would evaluate some King's Indian positions as winning for white, when in fact things are totally unclear. Black's attack is strong. It just takes time sometimes to hit, but when it hits with full force. Yeah, g4. What else? Could have expected that. And now queen c2. That was already with some time spent. Queen f8, rook c1. Yeah, that's nice, but what exactly happens on the c-file? It's really not clear. And I know it sounds harsh, but after the next move, he plays rook c7 now. I think after that, white has huge problems in keeping a playable game. I mean, you know, this is kind of a lot, yeah. The whole attacking force there on the king side. And if you have all your stuff here on the queen side basically not doing much, that can be a problem. It seems better here to play on the queen side immediately and just ignore that this rook is attacked, which is happening quite often in the classical King's Indian. White can think of a move like this, attacking a6, and just let black take. And it's not clear that black should take, but let's say it does. And you capture with the pawn. And now you have a dangerous passer, and you have sometimes the idea to do something with that knight on b4, which is otherwise a really somewhat stupid looking piece. This seems entirely unclear, this position. And I would have completely understand white's play if he was aiming for this, yeah, because this feels entirely, as I said, unclear and very complicated to play. The computer actually evaluates the position as roughly equal, interestingly enough. This is probably what he should have done. But by the way, Nakamura does not necessarily need to take. He can consider to give up that a6 pawn for his attack. Yeah, g3, for example, is a move that fits into the position quite nicely. Yeah, the point being that if white grabs here, then h4, yeah, this is accelerating the attack immensely, and very questionable if that is something for white. Yeah, black will attack with all his pieces. Yeah, note that this is sometimes coming, this is coming, knights jumping. It's just wow. Huh? Okay, this is what happened. Rook c7 and the bishop h6. Yeah, setting up for g3. bishop e1 because g3 was too awkward. And now h4. Yeah, this is these are the moments that made me stop playing the classical King's Indian with white, at least the main line here, because you just feel like some kind of tidal wave is rushing over you. Isn't that? Ugh. Yeah, it looks rather difficult. And after the next move that So is playing, he's definitely losing. He really is losing. But it's difficult to give him any advice. What is it that he should do? He took on g4, and we'll see what happens after that. But I don't really know what to suggest. Yeah, it's really difficult. Let's say I'm playing a move that is probably not making much sense, but I just want to see what happens. If white does something like that, black will play h3, yeah, and completely open up the king side. Yeah, takes, and then g3. Yeah, note how quickly now all pieces come into play. Yeah, black has jumps, rook g7. He's attacking with everything that he has. And this is also winning. Yeah? The computer is already giving a win, flat out win for black. The attack is just far too strong. Yeah, okay, Wesley so took on g4, f3. That was the idea. G takes and knight takes e4. That's very strong. Opens up the f file. Yeah, now white has a couple of moves that he can check, and he took a while. He took 30 minutes and played rook d1. It seems that he cannot save himself anymore. There's no way out to get a playable position. It seems the relatively best try was rook takes d7, trying to get that rook away there. But black has better options than rook takes d7, of course, after which here like this, white is fine. He has better options, and the main option, options is wrong. He has one move that is strong. He can take on f3, yeah, just smashing through. And this is a win, really. The threat is rook f1. If white is playing, let's say, something like that, or any other move that is not changing much, then this is going to win. Yeah, this is a mate.
Checkmate.
And king g2, h3 is also a nice way to win. Takes on h3, and now rook g1 is very nice. Yeah, that cuts off the king. The king has no squares, and there is no way out of this. Really no. What did I have in my line? Bishop d2. Yeah. Already very desperate. But then bishop f4 is the key thing. Queen h6 mate. Impossible to stop. For example, after bishop f4, you can give that check.
Check.
Knight takes.
Check.
Check.
Checkmate.
And one of many mates that might happen here in this in this game. So rook d7, rook f3. This is better.
Check.
This is better. I'm sorry. This is just played. This is just very easy. Sorry. Queen g2. Queen g2 is the better move. Takes. And now white has the desperate rook d1. But this is still this keeps asking questions. If black now takes, queen e4 is fine for white. Yeah, that is not convincing at all. But black has a better move. Here h3 is strong and probably winning, probably. But bishop d2 is exceptionally strong. Really, really great move. The point is that after bishop d2, and you have no big alternative, then knight f4 is hitting. And these two knights, this is just amazingly strong. Yeah, what is white supposed to do? The queen is hanging. Yeah, here.
Check. Check. Check.
And wins the house. Really, the absolute house. Yeah, here. Oops, king here.
Check.
Will even end in a mate. Yeah, it's really awkward here. Rook takes d7 was tougher though. Any other moves? a move that was suggested by Alejandro Ramirez in his note was knight c5. That is a bit tougher, and one point is that this is
check,
even good for white. But black has two replies that give him an advantage. Bishop g4 does, and d takes also does, which is also given by Ramirez. He's not saying that this saves white, but it at least avoids this kind of thing. Oh, sorry, black will take here first. It at least avoids an immediate mate, but it's ultimately also losing. It's already beyond saving. This is what was played by So, and Nakamura took on f3, of course. It's the most obvious move, but it is strong. It is strong. If white takes it, queen takes.
Check.
It's going to be a quick end of the game. Or queen g2, bishop g4. That's even stronger than, or I mean, it's not even stronger. It is stronger than taking on d1 because queen g6 was in here. Also black wins. Yeah, so rook d7 was played. Rook f1 check.
Check.
Yeah, white cannot take again because of checkmate. And king g2. Yeah, now Nakamura played the move bishop e3, which is a strong move and wins the game. Yeah, so no, in no way this is to be criticized. But he had an even more static way to continue, and it's just great to look at. h3 check was strong. King takes is the only move. And now the amazing point is rook f2. It's a bit of a mysterious move. What is the point of it? Yeah, we have to check what happens after the captures. But let's start first with knight takes. Yeah, this is easy.
Check. Checkmate.
Mate in 2. Cute mate. If bishop takes, black has, and this is the great one, queen f2. Yeah, that's an amazing move. The point is that black is threatening all kinds of checkmates. First of all, knight g5 mate, and if he takes, white takes.
Check. Checkmate.
This is really an absolute beauty of a checkmate. Isn't that nice? The king on h4 is getting mated by the knights and the bishop. That's really beautiful. It's really a bit unfortunate that there's still an a8 rook. Yeah, it would be great without the a8 rook. Those 3 minor pieces killing the white king, but it's just great. Yeah, and after rook f2, well, white cannot take, as we said. And well, what is he supposed to play? He has no moves. Yeah, if he, I mean, on a passer, let's say.
Check. 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 Checkmate.
Is one of the mates that can happen. Yeah, it would have been so beautiful to have that mate with the 3 minor pieces. But Nakamura had seen bishop e3 and he was checking here, and it's winning. So you don't look for more. He in the post game interview he said he had seen some kind of ideas that were related to rook f2 and queen f2, but he couldn't really make them work. So he went bishop e3. Yeah, bishop g3 doesn't look particularly great, but there was nothing really to do. If white takes the rook,
check.
Then h3, king takes.
Check. Checkmate.
Is a pretty quick end to the game. Yeah, bishop g3. Tooks. What kind of English is that? He took it. Rook takes f1.
Check.
Check on h4, and now queen h6. Yeah, black is the rook down, but it doesn't matter. It's checkmate, and with multiple moves. g5 was played now by So. What happened after this?
Check.
Check. Check.
Checkmate.
And mate. Yeah, one of many nice checkmates. Okay, when g5.
Check.
And this is strong, threatening again, mate. Knight f2, covering h3.
Check.
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 Check. Yeah, and now Black had a couple of ways to checkmate, but he chose a nice one.
Check.
Check. Takes.
Check.
Double check.
Checkmate.
And mate. Yeah, so really played it out. Yeah, he allowed the mate on the board to happen, which I thought was a very nice touch. This is not done that often in professional chess, but I think it's good. Yeah, if you see, okay, you're getting checkmate in a couple of moves, and it's just a nice picture on the board. Why not allow it? Yeah, I mean, it's very nice for the crowd to see that final picture appearing on the board. And it also, if he would have resigned a couple of moves earlier, I mean, he could have safely done so like 10 moves ago. Then I mean, you have to then explain to people, I'm getting checkmated and so on. Why not just play it out and be gracious to your opponent to allow that? Because really, Nakamura played a great game here. Yeah, it was really nice. It feels that somehow the preparation of the white player here was off. The position that he got wasn't all that great, and it seems that maybe he didn't have that much of an experience with this line. I mean, it really felt a little bit like that. There were some statements issued by the other players that felt that it was a bit of an anti-positional performance there on what he did on the queen side. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes the preparation is just off. You think you have a good position, and over the board you see, oh wow, this is getting dangerous. And I think he really quickly realized when we were around here, yeah, and h4 and so on, how dangerous this is. I mean, around here it's probably very difficult to hold if possible at all. Okay, I hope you enjoyed coverage of the 6th round. I think interesting round, 3 tense decisive games. The draws weren't that interesting, but 3 out of 5 is a pretty good ratio of good games. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow with coverage of round 7. Thanks for watching.